I thought I would give you a behind-the-scenes look at our upcoming movie, Alpha Strike, The War in Vietnam, Part 3. In this video, we will deal with the airstrikes that were launched against North Vietnam by the U.S. Navy. Some of the airstrikes lasted as long as 10 months. During the peak of the war, a carrier typically launched 9,000 to 13,000 sorties. As we all know, this strategy of bombing the Vietnamese government into submission did not work, and the U.S. eventually withdrew from the conflict, leaving the South Vietnamese government to stand on their own. We started working on the script for this movie back in April, and the 7th Fleet Navy Group, based on the USS Forrestal, located in the Vietnam Sims, has been training and preparing for the film since then. I built the sets for the bombing scenes on a private homestead sim, and we're about ready to shoot the Hanoi rail yard scene. To set up the scene, I used Vice target scripts in the rail cars and buildings to simulate bomb destruction. I tested the setup using Shauna's Aircraft's Douglas A-1 Skyraider. Of course, the Skyraider was not used over North Vietnam, but I used it to test because of the awesome 500-pound bombs it has, and it's maneuverable enough that I can bomb and watch what is happening below. Once I get the props set up to my liking, I call for a test shoot to see how everything is going to respond. After the test shoot, I'll make adjustments to the targets and other props and prepare for the final shoot. This movie will have several major scenes which will challenge my skill as a director as well as the actors. Please stay tuned to the SL Aviation Network for more updates to the film, and watch for the release near the end of September.
Is the combat camera guys up there?
Yes, sir.
Tell them I said hello. Tell everybody I said hi.
Okay. They're taking your picture right now, so tomorrow.
This past week, Mitch Latcher and I visited Jade Kangas at the Second Life Marine Corps headquarters at Chase Field on Frederica Sim. Jade took us on a demo flight of her new S-2 Tracker. It's an impressive aircraft, and here is what she had to say about it. I asked her why she decided to build a Tracker, and she said, "I've had a love affair with big piston engine aircraft ever since flying backseat in a family friend's T-28 Trojan. I love the sound of that big radial engine, something about it that just screams massive power. As far as the Tracker, I had seen one at an air show in California when I was still in the military. I got to go through it, and I fell in love with it. The Tracker is not the most glamorous aircraft, but it was a very versatile aircraft, and it's good at its job, which initially was ASW, anti-submarine warfare. The Navy soon realized this and turned it into an AEW platform, Airborne Early Warning, a COD aircraft, carrier onboard delivery, and a multi-engine trainer. In civilian hands, it is still being used to fight forest fires. Jade tells us that overall, the build took about 1.5 months with building and flight testing. We actually could have released it earlier, but my partners felt it best to take it slow and thoroughly flight test it. I asked Jade about the build team, and she said, "I have been blessed in having two great people work with me on this collaborative effort, Shanna Carpool and Felix FBS Dagger. They are the greatest, and without them, the Tracker would not have come to life in SL." Jade had this to say about the plane's features. Besides the standard features of moving control surfaces and retractable gear, the Tracker also has an opening and closing entry hatch and boarding ladder and fully functioning tail hook for those Navy hookers out there. The Tracker utilizes Shauna Carpool's catapult and arrestor system, so it will not work with the AMOC arrestor gear. Personally, I prefer Shauna's arrestor system since she incorporated some realism into where you have to fly the craft down to the wire and hit it within certain parameters to catch the wire. With Shanna's system, you can bolt her. You can't land short of the wires and drag the hook over them and catch them like you can with some other systems. I asked Jade about paints and custom textures, and she said currently as we speak, Shanna is working on a paint kit for the tracker where the customer can do their own textures so they can personalize their own aircraft. Also, we are working on an issue with the wings so we can send out an update and have the aircraft with folding wings, which will come in handy when taxiing on the ramp of a small airfield. I'm also working on an attachment for the tracker that our firebugs out there will enjoy, but it's still in development, and that's all I have to say about that. Jade tells us that the tracker is available at the SL Marine Corps hangar at Hollywood Airport on Santa Catalina Sim, as well as the SL Marine Corps' MCAS Chase Field on Frederica Sim. Shauna also has a vendor set up at her home store, and there's also one at the DOR Sim. Jade provided some additional information about the real Grumman S2 tracker. It was previously known as the S2F prior to 1962 and was the first purpose-built single airframe anti-submarine warfare aircraft to enter service with the U.S. Navy. Designed and initially built by Grumman, the tracker was one of conventional design with twin engines, a high wing, and tricycle undercarriage. The type was exported to a number of navies around the world. Introduced in 1952, the tracker saw service in the USN until the mid-1970s, with a few aircraft remaining in service with other air arms into the 21st century. The last operating fleet is maintained by Argentina and Brazil. The history of lighter-than-air flight began with the first hot air balloon built in 1783 by Joseph and Etienne Montgolfier in France. Immediately after the first flight, well, float might be more accurate, engineers and inventors worked towards perfecting a lighter-than-air craft. Although inventors were able to make many advancements, the biggest challenge was to find a way to successfully steer the craft. Inventors conceived numerous ideas, some seemingly reasonable, like adding oars or sails, others a little far-fetched, like harnessing teams of vultures. The problem wasn't solved until 1886, when Gottlieb Daimler created a lightweight gasoline engine. Thus, by the time of the American Civil War, the lighter-than-air crafts were still unsteerable. However, they quickly proved to be an invaluable military asset. In a tethered balloon several hundred feet in the air, a military scout could survey the battlefield or reconnoiter an enemy's position. In 1863, 25-year-old Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin was on a year's leave from the German army to observe the American Civil War. On August 19, 1863, Count Zeppelin had his first lighter-than-air experience. Yet it wasn't until his forced retirement from the military in 1890, at age 52, that Count Zeppelin began to design and build his own lighter-than-air crafts. While Daimler's 1886 lightweight gasoline engine had inspired many new inventors to attempt a sturdy lighter-than-air craft, Count Zeppelin's crafts were different because of their rigid structure. Count Zeppelin's, partly using notes he had recorded in 1874 and partly implementing new design elements, created his first lighter-than-air craft, the Luftstift Zeppelin I, LZ-1. Watching the second attempt of the LZ-1 in October 1900 was an uninspired Dr. Hugo Echner, who was covering the event for the newspaper, the Frankfurter Zeitung. Echner soon met Count Zeppelin and over several years cultivated a lasting friendship. Little did Echner know at this time that he would soon command the first lighter-than-air ship to fly around the world, as well as become famous for popularizing air travel. Count Zeppelin made some technical changes to the design of the LZ-1, implementing them in the construction of LZ-2, first flown in 1905, which was soon followed by LC-3 in 1906, and then followed by LZ-4 in 1908. Continued success of his lighter-than-air craft changed Count Zeppelin's image from the foolish Count to a man whose name became synonymous with lighter-than-air crafts. Though Count Zeppelin had been inspired to create lighter-than-air crafts for military purposes, he was forced to concentrate the advantage of paying civilian passengers. World War I again changed the Zeppelins into military machines. As early as 1909, Count Zeppelin founded the German Airship Transport Company. Considering that Count Zeppelin's first lighter-than-air craft had flown in 1900, air travel had quickly become popular. A few weeks ago, I joined my friends in the Ultralight Airship Users Group for one of their bi-monthly flights. We flew the Sea of Fables. It was a relaxing time with lots of beautiful scenery and good fellowship. When I was a kid, a lot of people in my part of the Midwest would take a Sunday drive. On Sunday afternoon, Dad would pack the family in the station wagon and drive out through the countryside, enjoying the scenery and each other's company. Well, except for my annoying little sister. Still today, if someone is driving down the road, gawking and slowing traffic, we call them Sunday driver. The Sunday drive was a relaxing time, but it seems the tradition is dead, at least in my life. So, in the spirit of an old-fashioned Sunday drive, I host a regular weekly grid flight called Sunday Flyers Club. The format is simple, and the flight path is pretty much the same each week with a few variations. We basically fly in the Blake Sea and adjoining regions. I do a music to fly by broadcast with plenty of good music and interesting features. Any type of aircraft is allowed, but lighter than air is encouraged. We start and stop at a different airport or location each week. When we land at the end, we have a time of music and fellowship. Please join us for our next flight. Here are some scenes from Flight 1, which was held on July 27th.